copyright. Unauthorized use may result in legal liability. I pressed the gas pedal to the floor, my hand gripping the steering wheel in a white-knuckled vice, while my heart pounded as if trying to break free from my chest. The phone in my hand emitted long, unanswered rings, again and again. "Come on, Ryan, damn it. Pick up." I hissed through clenched teeth, my eyes locked on the road. The city lights flickered past, neon reflections smearing across the windshield, but only one thought burned in my mind. Where's my son? Why wasn't he answering? A suffocating sense of dread coiled around my ribs, tightening its grip like a noose with every passing second. I swerved onto a side street, heading to the spot where he usually hung out with his friends. One more try. I raised the phone and dialed his number again. Ringing, ringing, ringing. And then, "Hello," came a weak, barely audible voice. "Ryan." I exhaled sharply, my entire body tensing. Something was wrong. "Where are you, son?" Silence. Then a faint groan. "Dad." His breathing was ragged. "It hurts." A cold wave of terror surged through me, paralyzing my limbs for a split second. "Where are you?" I barked, shoving the accelerator to its limit. "Abandoned warehouse on West Street," he choked out. "I'm on my way. Stay with me." I flung the phone onto the passenger seat and yanked the wheel hard, swerving into oncoming traffic to overtake a truck. My mind spun in a vicious spiral. What happened? Who did this? Why? Then the answer hit me like a sledgehammer. Those bastards. Dario Fernandez's sont tumi. That entitled little jackal always circling with his pack of bottom feeders. Ryan had mentioned how Tommy had tried humiliating him in front of some girls. But my boy wasn't one to roll over. He fought back. And from what I heard, he fought well. Too well, apparently. Now, they had gotten their revenge. I tore down the deserted street leading to the warehouse. My headlights swept over a hunched figure slumped against a concrete wall. Ryan. I barely killed the engine before it was out of the car, rushing to him. Dropping to my knees, I took into sight. His face battered, bloodied lips, a swollen eye. His clothes were torn, his breathing labored. Bah! His voice was weak, but there was something else in it. Rage. I carefully helped him sit up. He winced in pain, but held onto my arm with surprising strength. Who? My voice was colder than the night air. Ryan lifted his head, his good eye blazing with fury. "Tommy Fernandez," he spat. I nodded. Inside, rage boiled, barely contained beneath the surface, waiting to erupt. "Good," I said, settling him into the car. "You made the right choice." Now it was my turn. When I got home, the only light in the hallway was the soft glow of a night lamp. From the kitchen, the sound of running water drifted through the silence. Julia. Of course, she wasn't sleeping. I stepped inside. She stood at the sink in a silk robe, gazing out the window with a wine glass in hand. The faint scent of French perfume hung in the air. "Ryan's in the hospital," I stated flatly. She turned slowly, her bored expression barely shifting. Setting her glass down on the marble counter, she sighed. "Of course," she drawled. "What did he get himself into this time?" Something twisted deep in my gut. He was beaten. A whole gang of punks jumped him. He could have. I cut myself off, my fist clenching involuntarily. Julia merely rolled her eyes and shrugged. "And you expect me to throw a tantrum now? It's his own fault, Michael. He's just like you. Reckless. Always picking fights instead of using his head." I stepped closer, palms pressing into the cold stone of the counter. "Do you even hear yourself?" My voice was low, dangerous. Our son was attacked. Not one-on-one. Not a fair fight. A pack of them. She smirked. Then maybe he shouldn't have provoked them. Actions have consequences. Have you ever, even once, given a damn about him? Julia raised an eyebrow in mock surprise. "And have you ever tried teaching him anything besides how to throw a punch?" I exhaled slowly, the fire inside me turning into an inferno. "So what? He should have just taken it. Let Tommy Fernandez humiliate him?" She held my gaze, then shrugged. "Maybe it would have saved him." Silence stretched between us. "You care more about that wine glass than your own son," I said finally. She scowled but didn't reply. I turned and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" She called after me. "To handle it," I said, slamming the door behind me. I stormed out, the force of my anger rattling the hallway windows. My pulse pounded like war drums. I had to breathe to stay in control, but my grip on the steering wheel was so tight my knuckles turned white. The phone in my pocket felt like a burning coal against my skin. I pulled it out, dialed, and pressed it to my ear, ringing. Once, twice, 3 times. Christ, Mike, do you even know what time it is? Came the groggy but instantly alert voice on the other end. Nate, I need your help. Silence. Not hesitation. Nate never hesitated. He was assessing. What happened? His tone shifted, sharp, focused. I exhaled hard, merging onto the empty highway. Ryan. He was jumped. A pack of them. He's in the hospital. My throat tightened with barely restrained fury. I needed to watch over him while you do what you're about to do. Nate finished for me. I clenched my jaw. Yeah. A beat of silence, then. Which hospital? I gave him the address. I'll be there in 10, he said, then added, Mike. I waited. You sure you want to wake that part of yourself up again? I closed my eyes and remembered the times I fought in the cage, especially the last moment. The face of the man I had killed flashed before me instantly. I recalled his gaze that exact second when he realized I wasn't going to stop, when there was nothing human left in me. No, Ian Sorath. But I don't have a choice. The line went dead. I knew Nate would do what needed to be done. He would watch over my son while I hunted down those who had turned his face into a bloody mess. My hands tightened around the wheel. Now was my move. I parked across from the bar, slipped my phone into my pocket, and stepped out of the car, feeling it settle in. The familiar sensation, cold and calculating rage, the kind that always came before a fight. The door gave way under my push, and I walked in, immediately hit by the stench of cheap beer, sweat, and smoke. In the far corner, at a table, they sat. The jackalls. 4 of them. I recognized them from Ryan's description. The fat short one with a neck tattoo, the lanky bastard with the chain, the guy in the baseball cap, and of course the leader among them, the hulking bald guy with an earring. Tommy Fernandez's lapdogs. The spoiled brat of the local drug dealer. I knew they wouldn't scare easily. I walked up to their table, unhurried, eyes steady. They noticed me immediately, exchanged glances, but didn't react until I spoke. I need Tommy, I said, my voice even firm. I need to have a word with him. The bald one smirked, leaned back in his chair, and gave me a lazy once-over. So, you're the daddy of that little pup we smeared yesterday? The tattooed fat guy burst out laughing, slapping the table. Oh man, you serious? You think if you walk in here with that tough guy face, we're just going to shit ourselves? The one in the baseball cap shook his head, taking a swig from his bottle. Walk away while you still can, old man. This ain't a playground, and your kid had it coming. Consider it a free lesson. I clenched my jaw, but didn't make a single wasted movement. Someone has to answer for this, I said calmly. That sent them into another fit of laughter. The lanky one stood up, cracking his neck like he was warming up. Get a load of this, guys. Daddy's here to avenge his kid. You know what, Pops? He took a step closer, sizing me up. You're about to get it worse than your pup did. Maybe then you'll learn to keep your nose out of places it doesn't belong. The fat guy stood as well, cracking his knuckles. Guess we got to teach him how things work around here. The bald one didn't move, just kept smirking, twisting his earring between his fingers. Go ahead, Mike, impress us, he drawled, eyes gleaming with amusement. I wasn't surprised he knew my name. My past wasn't exactly a secret in this town. I exhaled slowly, flexing my fingers, then locked eyes with him. Don't worry, I said coldly. I will. The fat one lunged first, stupid enough to think his size meant something. I shifted to the side, easily dodging his clumsy swing, and drove my fist straight into his solar plexus. The air left his lungs in a harsh wheeze, his body folding over. I followed up with an elbow to the back of his head. A dull thud, and his bulk crashed to the floor like a sack of garbage. The lanky one was already coming at me, a bottle raised. I caught his wrist mid-swing, twisted it sharply, and relished the satisfying crack of breaking bone. The bottle slipped from his failing grip, but I caught it in midair and casually smashed it against his skull. Hit harder, I barely felt that, he rasped, staggering. I smirked, grabbed him by the collar, and hurled him across the table. He crashed onto the bald one's chair, forcing him to lean back just in time to avoid the impact. The guy in the baseball cap pulled a knife and lunged. I sidestepped swiftly, seized his wrist, and twisted hard. The blade slipped from his fingers, but before it could hit the ground, I caught it and drove it straight into his ass. He shrieked, his eyes bulging in shock. "Hold on tight," I told him, clapping him on the shoulder. Wouldn't want it to fall out. Then I spun and drove a kick into his face. He hit the ground, unconscious and humiliated. All this time, the bald one had been watching, smirking. Now, finally, he rose, slowly pulling the ring off his finger. "Now that was a show," he chuckled, rolling his neck. "Haven't had this much fun in a while. You have one last chance to walk away," I warned, checking my knuckles for any stray teeth. He shook his head. "No, Michael, you had your last chance to stay out of this shit." He moved fast, faster than I expected, throwing the first punch. I dodged, but his follow-up slammed into my ribs. It hurt. Manageable, but it hurt. I stepped on his foot to distract him and slammed my fist into his jaw. The bald man staggered, spat blood, and nodded. "Not bad. Let's go again." "No problem." I surged forward, ducking under his neck swing, and hammered a brutal series of strikes into his ribs. Bone cracked, and he hissed, retreating. I didn't let him breathe. Snatching a glass ashtray from the bar, I smashed it into his temple. He wobbled but stayed on his feet. "You're a tough bastard," I muttered before grabbing a bar stool and bringing it down across his back. The bald man dropped to his knees, gasping for air. I grabbed him by the collar, yanked him close, and leaned in. "Tell Tommy I'm coming for him. And his scumbag father, too." I shoved him down, turned, and walked toward the exit, leaving behind only groans, blood, and shattered furniture. As I stepped outside, my phone rang. Unknown number, but I already knew who it was. I answered. "Speak." A slow, measured voice with a thick Mexican accent came through the line. "Senor Black, impressive performance. I hear you made your point convincingly." I smirked, leaning against my car. "If I wanted to be convincing, your dogs wouldn't have any limbs left." A soft chuckle echoed from the other end. "Oh, so that's why my son is now texting me with trembling hands, saying someone wants to kill him." "Not someone," I corrected. "Me." Silence stretched between us, but I could hear his breathing. He wasn't the type to lose his composure. "Do you know who I am, Michael? I know you're a sack of shit who sent his spoiled brat to sick a pack of animals on my son." This was a misunderstanding. I gritted my teeth. "Listen closely, Fernandez. You have two options. Either your pup crawls to me on his knees and begs for forgiveness, or I find him and break everything you forgot to break when you raised him." The silence lingered. "You think you can take me on alone?" His voice turned icy. "I'm giving you a chance to forget this ever happened and return to your pathetic little life." I chuckled. "Pathetic? You don't get it, Dario. I've already been through hell. I don't care how many men, how much money, or how many guns you have. You're just another problem for me to solve." He exhaled quietly, then spoke again. "You're making a mistake, Michael." I smiled, starting the engine. "No, Dario. I'm fixing yours." I didn't leave right away. Instead, I sat in the car and watched as those broken bastards stumbled out of the bar one by one. They staggered, clutching their shattered limbs, some wiping blood from their faces, while the guy with the knife still lodged in his backside didn't even attempt to pull it out, probably realizing that in his condition, it was best not to make any sudden movements. But I wasn't interested in them. I was waiting for them to reach someone more important. I didn't have to wait long. Limping slightly, the bald one pulled out his phone, mumbled something about needing urgent help, and headed toward a dark alley. A few minutes later, a black Dodge Challenger pulled up. A man stepped out of the car, and I recognized him immediately. Ramon Delgado, Dario Fernandez's right-hand man, responsible for security and logistics. If Dario had a lieutenant for dirty work, it was him. "Damn, you guys look like shit," Ramon drawled lazily, glancing them over. "Who the hell did this to you?" The bald man winced, rubbing his jaw. "Black," Ramon smirked. "You mean that Black? The one who used to tear people apart in the cage?" "The very same." Ramon scratched the back of his head, then casually spat on the pavement. And you mean to tell me you lost? He's a goddamn animal, the guy with the knife in his ass chimed in. That's psycho. He shoved a knife right into my... Ramon raised a hand, cutting off the whining. Don't want to know, man. He sighed. All right, let's go. We'll sort it out. Dario's pissed, but he's got an important deal tonight, so he doesn't want to mess right now. My ears perked up. A deal? Interesting. I'll let them leave first, then quietly pulled out behind them, keeping my distance. They turned into the industrial district, heading toward the warehouses. The parking lot was nearly empty, the lighting weak. I stopped in the shadows and stepped out of the car, moving as silently as a ghost. Ramon made his way toward an office building next to the warehouses while his men stayed in the car. My luck. I crept to the door, waited for him to step inside, then followed. When Ramon woke up, he was tied to a chair. I sat across from him, lazily spinning a wrench in my hands. Morning, sunshine, I smiled. Ramon tensed, taking in the situation, then let out a long breath. You son of a bitch. Yeah, I know. Now's the part where you tell me that if they catch me, they'll chop me up, burn me, and feed me to the pigeons. Heard all before. Let's skip that part. You have no idea who you're messing with. I swung the wrench hard against his knee. Ramon howled in agony, cursing through clenched teeth. How about now? I asked calmly. Do I understand now? He panted, struggling to push through the pain. What do you want? There's a deal happening tonight. Where and when? Ramon shook his head. Even if I knew, I wouldn't tell you. Without a word, I swung again, this time cracking the wrench against his hand. A sharp snap echoed through the room. Fuck, I sighed. Come on, Ramon. You don't really think I'm going to stop, do you? He squeezed his eyes shut, grinding his teeth, then finally exhaled. 1 a.m. Warehouse 14, southern side of the port. I nodded, stood up, and loosened the ropes. Then I grabbed him by the collar and hauled him to his feet. Let's go, pal. We've got a fun night ahead. Ramon stared at me in horror. You're taking me with you? I shrugged. Of course. What? You thought I'd just leave you here to call Dario? He groaned. They're gonna kill you. I smirked and shoved him into the car. Let them try. I pulled up near Warehouse 14, cut the engine, and scanned my surroundings. The port was nearly deserted, with only a few dim streetlights casting weak pools of light over the rusted containers and stacks of wooden pallets. In the distance, the water lapped against the pier, the occasional screech of a seagull breaking the eerie silence. Ramon sat beside me, breathing heavily. His wrists were zip-tied, sweat beading on his forehead. He was trying to act like he had control, but his eyes betrayed his fear. You think gagging me and tying me up is going to help you? He rasped. I nodded. Ido. Without another word, I turned and drove my fist into his temple. His head snapped sideways, eyes rolling back as he slumped against the dashboard, unconscious. What? You thought I was taking you on a field trip? I muttered, stepping out of the car. I tightened the zip ties around his wrists, shoved his limp body between the seats, checked his breathing, then slammed the door shut and made my way toward the warehouse. The door was slightly ajar. Moving cautiously, I pressed against the wall and spotted 2 guards at the entrance. They weren't exactly alert. One was scrolling through his phone, the other taking lazy drags from a cigarette, exhaling smoke into the cold night air. I didn't waste time. I grabbed the first one by the back of the head and slammed his face into the metal wall of the warehouse. A dull thud, and his body crumpled to the ground. The second one barely had time to turn before I struck him in the throat with the edge of my palm, cutting off his air. He gasped, eyes wide in shock, before I followed up with a crushing punch to his jaw. He collapsed, twitching in the final spasms of unconsciousness. I listened. Inside, the warehouse was silent. Too silent. I slipped through the entrance, melting into the shadows. The air was thick with the scent of oil, metal, and something wrong. I took a few steps, and suddenly, the entire warehouse lit up with a blinding flood of white light. I froze, shielding my face with a hand. When my vision adjusted, I realized I'd walked straight into a trap. Armed men surrounded me. Dozens of them. Guns at the ready, pistols, rifles, shotguns. Well, Michael Black, a familiar voice called out. Stepping from the crowd, grinning like he had just won the lottery, was Tommy Fernandez. Told you, Dad. This dumbass was gonna show up. I slowly raised my hands, locking eyes with his smug, arrogant face. So you knew I was coming. Tommy laughed. Of course I knew. You're so predictable, Black. Thought you'd just storm in, start wrecking shit, then go on some revenge spree like some action movie hero? Jesus, man, you're a walking cliché. Then why all this? I gestured to the armed crowd around me. Footsteps echoed from the back of the warehouse. To watch you drop to your knees, another voice answered. And then I saw him, Dario Fernandez. A tall, gaunt man with streaks of gray in his neatly trimmed beard stood before me, clad in a spotless black suit. In one hand, he held a cigar, in the other, a gold lighter. He flicked it open, lazily bringing the flame to the cigar's tip. Inhaled deeply, exhaled a perfect smoke ring, and only then did he deem me worthy of his gaze. Kneel, Michael. Hands behind your head. I remained still, my pulse hammering in my temples, every muscle coiled tight. But I knew there was no way out. The metallic clicks of gun bolts being pulled back echoed around me as men shifted into better positions. Slowly, I lowered myself onto my knees, interlocking my fingers at the back of my head. Tommy stepped closer, crouching down with a smirk. So, tough guy, where's all that attitude now? I met his gaze without flinching. It's right up your ass, Tommy. Right next to the knife, I'm gonna put there. His face twisted in fury, and he swung, but Dario stopped him with a simple flick of his wrist. Calm yourself, son. We have plenty of time to talk with Mr. Black. I sensed movement behind me. Good night, Black, someone whispered just before the rifle but smashed into the back of my skull. The last thing I heard was Tommy's laughter before the world went black. I woke up to a dull, throbbing pain radiating through my skull, spreading like poison. My head was heavy, my mouth dry, my muscles stiff from the awkward position I was in. The moment my eyes fluttered open, I knew I was in deep shit. My hands were bound tightly behind my back, my legs secured, and I was seated on a hard metal chair in the middle of a dimly lit room. The air reeked of dampness, cheap tobacco, and machine oil. Overhead, a battered ceiling fan spun lazily, casting flickering, distorted shadows across the walls. Dario Fernandez lounged comfortably in an armchair before me, exuding the relaxed air of a man catching up with an old friend over coffee. A cigar smoldered between his fingers, and a glass of whiskey rested on the table beside him. Tommy stood somewhere behind him, grinning like a satisfied rat. Well, Michael. Dario took a drag, exhaled another smoke ring, and tilted his head. Head hurting much? Not too bad. I murmured with a lazy smile, tasting blood on my lips. Though if you wanted me knocked out in one hit, you should have hired someone stronger. Dario chuckled, taking a slow sip of whiskey. You know what's funny? We knew you were tailing us. From the moment you left that bar. We just let you think you were the smartest man in the room. I said nothing, watching him carefully. Ramon played his part beautifully, he continued. That dumb sack of shit isn't worth much, but he sure can lie. You should have seen your face when he fed you that story about the deal. Oh God, I bet you thought you had it all figured out, huh? Thought you'd waltz in here, tear through everyone, play the hero again. I took a slow breath. Dario, can you at least stop whining? I'm starting to miss the rifle, but to the head. Tommy lunged, but his father barely lifted a hand to stop him. Easy, son. Michael here is our guest. Dario turned back to me with an amused smirk. And since you're here, I have an offer for you. Men like you. I need men like you. I raised an eyebrow. Oh yeah? What? You're running low on dumb muscle. I need men who can think as well as fight. Men who know how to break bones properly, with precision, without unnecessary noise. Men who can make money, not just spend it. Men like you. I locked eyes with him and smirked. You really think you have a shot here, Dario? You want to know your mistake. He leaned in slightly, intrigued. Tell me. My smirk widened. You assumed I'd ever work for a piece of shit like you. Silence. Dario let out a heavy sigh, shook his head, and rose from his chair. That's a shame, Michael. A real shame. You leave me no choice. He stepped closer, placing a hand on my shoulder like we were old pals, then leaned in and whispered, They're going to cut you into pieces and feed you to the dogs. But that's not even the worst part. You know what really should scare you? I didn't answer. I'm going to get your son. Slowly, carefully. Make sure he feels everything. But first, I'll tell him how his father begged for mercy before he died. How he whimpered like a beaten dog. How he gave up. My jaw clenched so hard my teeth ached. I knew the game. They wanted to piss me off, make me reckless. But right now, I was calm. Calm like the ocean before storm. Dario straightened up and gave a simple nod to someone behind me. Take him to Mario. Make sure he's prepared properly. Footsteps. Rough hands grabbed me, yanking me forward. Mario, huh? Good. Now I had a name for the first person who was going to die. They dragged me down a corridor, thick fingers digging into my shoulders, Tommy's laughter echoing behind me. I didn't resist. Not yet. This was an old lesson I had learned in the cage. Let your enemy think they've won. Let them lower their guard, then rip them apart. The door at the end of the hall groaned open, and I was shoved inside a room that reeked of charred meat, blood, and rot. It looked like a butcher's kitchen. A rusted metal table stood in the center, and beside it, a short, stocky man in a stained apron turned toward me. Well, what do we have here? So this was Mario, the butcher. He wiped his bloodied hands on his apron, smirking as he rolled a cart of tools toward the table. You're lucky, gringo, he said, picking up a thick-bladed knife. I work fast. Oh, I don't doubt it. I muttered, rolling my neck like I was warming up. The fuck's he smiling about? Grumbled one of the goons holding me. Maybe he's just stupid, his buddy replied, tightening his grip on my arms. Or maybe, I smirked, I'm just waiting for the right moment. And then I moved. I slammed my head backward, smashing my skull into the nose of the idiot gripping me too tight. A sickening crack. He stumbled back, clutching his face, blood spurting through his fingers. The second one lunged, but I twisted, drove my knee into his groin, and finished him off with a brutal elbow to the temple. Mario snapped out of his shock and lunged at me with the knife. I grabbed the closest thing within reach, a cast iron pan, and swung it full force into his face. How's that taste, chef? I growled as he reeled. Not done. I grabbed him by the apron, yanked him forward, and headbutted him straight in the nose. He wailed, but I wasn't finished. I spun him around and slammed his face down onto the scorching hot stovetop. The room filled with the smell of burning flesh and his agonized screams. Hope you like it well done, asshole. I muttered, shoving him off. He collapsed, convulsing. I ended it with a swift kick to his throat, crushing his windpipe. One left. The last goon had recovered, gun drawn. Too late. I snatched the nearest blade, a massive cleaver, and swung. The gun clattered to the ground as his severed hand hit the floor. He shrieked in agony, but I silenced him with a skull-cracking blow against the fridge. I exhaled, wiped the blood from my face, and smiled. Dario thought he had me cornered. He was wrong. I grabbed the dead guard's pistol, reloaded it, and moved toward the exit. It was time to take this damn place for myself. Stepping out of the kitchen, shaking blood and grease from my hands, I finally understood where I was. This wasn't just a warehouse. This was Dario's base. A massive gray concrete fortress buried deep in the industrial zone outside the city. High fences lined with razor wire, searchlights sweeping the perimeter, armed bastards at every turn. Outside, it was military precision. Inside, a kingdom built on dirty money, drugs, and men who had long since stopped valuing human life. I moved through the corridors, taking in the details. Every door led either to a stockpile of weapons or to a conversation room, where dried blood still stained the concrete walls. No one had noticed me. Yet, I needed to arm myself. I slipped into an open room, a goddamn armory. Metal shelves buckled under the weight of weapons. Assault rifles, shotguns, grenades, knives. A beautiful selection. I moved quickly, without hesitation. Shotgun. Screw it. Let's make this messy. I grabbed a Mossberg 500, checked the shells, and slung it over my back. A couple of Glocks with suppressors for the quiet work. I tucked them into my waistband. Classic combat knife. Never know when you'll need to cut something open. Oh, now this is a beauty. My lips curled into a grin as I found an old, well-sharpened machete. Now I was ready. There were plenty of them, but I didn't care. As I stepped out of the room, I heard footsteps, Time to get started. The first guard rounded the corner, yawning, a cup of coffee in hand. I shot him in the face with the silenced pistol. The cup hit the floor. The second one managed to spot me, but not fast enough. I lunged forward, grabbed him by the neck, and drove my knife deep into his liver. His eyes went wide, but I kept pushing the blade in deeper until he gurgled and slumped to the ground. I moved down the corridor. "Hey, who's there?" A voice called from ahead. I didn't answer, just grabbed the shotgun, stepped around the corner, and pulled the trigger. The goon reaching for his weapon took a full blast of buckshot to the chest and exploded into pieces. "What the fuck?" Someone screamed down the hallway. I sprinted forward, ducking behind a column while reloading the shotgun. Another bastard burst out a nearby room, but I was already there. I knocked his gun from his hands and smashed the stock of my shotgun into his skull. The bone cracked like dry wood. "Sleep tight, asshole." Two more thugs ran out from the adjacent hall, opening fire. I rolled to the side, grabbed the machete, and charged. One swing, his arm came off at the elbow. He shrieked, but I didn't give him time to suffer. The second slash opened his throat. The other one barely had time to raise his pistol before I kicked it from his grip, grabbed his collar, and slammed his head into the wall. His body slid to the floor, leaving a red streak behind. I paused, listening. In the distance, shouting, hurried footsteps. They were preparing. I smirked, wiped the machete clean, and moved forward. They wanted a show. They were about to get one. I moved through the corridors, leaving a trail of blood behind me like an executioner on his last day of work. The stench of gunpowder, shredded flesh, and hot metal filled the air, mixing with the agonized screams of those two slow to die. "Why the fuck isn't he dead yet?" Someone shrieked from ahead. "It's Black, you idiot. Who let him get loose?" Another voice, panicked and cracking. I chuckled, reaching for the grenades stacked on the shelf. "Oh, now this will come in handy," I muttered, pulling the pin with my teeth. I tossed the first grenade down the corridor without looking. Hey, what the boom? Blood sprayed across the walls, chunks of bodies splattering onto the floor. I stepped into the ruined hallway, stepping over smoldering limbs. Two more rushed around the corner, one with a shotgun, the other with an assault rifle. I didn't give them time to react. One stepped forward, slammed the machete's handle into the first guy's skull. His head cracked like a rotten coconut, and he dropped. The second one managed to fire, the buckshot grazing my shoulder. I stepped in close, rammed the machete into his groin, and ripped it upward. He screamed like a pig in a slaughterhouse, his hands fumbling at the mangled mess of his insides. "B-bro, please," he gurgled, choking on his own blood. I leaned in, yanked the machete free, and whispered, "You're already dead." One clean slash across his throat, and it was over. I wiped the blade on his jacket and kept moving. They were waiting for me now. Fuck, he's coming. 6 of them, lined up in front of the doors leading to the main hall. All armed. "Light him up." I dove sideways, lobbing the second grenade right at their feet. Shit, SHI boom. The explosion ripped through them, spraying meat and bones in every direction. I stepped forward, my boots crunching over severed fingers, a stray eyeball, and still smoking ribs. One of them was still alive, tried to crawl away. I stomped my boot onto his skull, grinding it into pulp. I moved upward, methodically climbing through the levels of the base, leaving only blood and bodies behind. Each floor was another slaughterhouse, but I was the starving beast unleashed inside. On the 3rd floor, 3 more waited, 1 with an Uzi, 2 with shotguns. "We've got him cornered," one of them shouted, peeking out from behind a column. I put a bullet between his eyes. His body hit the floor like a bag of rotting meat. The second one fired, grazing me again, but I was already closing the distance. I grabbed him by the collar, slammed him into the wall, and buried my knife in his gut. Twisted, pulled. "Keep your guts inside, buddy," I muttered as he slid to the ground, clutching his shredded stomach. The third tried to run. I shot him in the knees and walked toward him as he writhed, clutching at his ruined legs. "No, please." I didn't even let him finish. One clean swing of the machete, and his head hit the ground with a dull thump. As I climbed higher, I noticed fewer men. Dario was pulling everyone to the top. On the staircase to the 4th floor, 2 more tried to set up an ambush. I saw them first. "Come on, motherfucker, let's go," one of them shouted, aiming his gun at me. I smiled, pulled the knife I had been holding between my teeth, and threw it. The blade sank straight into his throat. The second man staggered back, firing in a panic, but I was already on him, grabbing his face and slamming the back of his head into the railing. His skull cracked. Silence. I stepped over his body and burst onto the top floor. But Dario wasn't there. His office was empty. Only an open door leading to the roof, and the sound of an approaching helicopter told me he was already trying to escape. I sprinted forward, charging onto the rooftop, and there he was. Dario stood next to Tommy, who was trembling like a beaten dog. The helicopter hovered above, the pilot already leaning out to open the door. I didn't let him. Lifting my pistol, I aimed and shot him straight in the head. The pilot's brains sprayed across the cockpit as the chopper lurched sideways, its landing gear catching on the edge of the roof. With a screech of metal, it tilted forward. The rotors clipped the concrete, shattering on impact, and the machine dangled precariously, slowly sliding toward the abyss. Dario and Tommy stood frozen, staring at me. I stepped closer, gun trained on them. "Well, boys, looks like the show's over." Dario swallowed hard, fear flickering behind his composed mask. But then, suddenly, something in his eyes changed. He straightened, his mouth curling into a smirk, as if he had just remembered an ace up his sleeve. "You know, Michael, maybe you shouldn't be so hasty," he said, his voice regaining that smug confidence I fucking hated. "See, while you've been here, waving your guns around and playing the Messiah, my men have already reached the hospital." I didn't flinch, but something cold crawled down my spine. "One call," he continued, unbuttoning his cuff and rolling up his sleeve like he was preparing for a long conversation. "And your son joined St. Peter, or maybe somewhere lower, considering where he comes from." Tommy let out a nervous, high-pitched giggle, nodding eagerly. "Yeah, hear that. One call, and your kid won't even have time to." I cut him off with a sharp gesture. "So what are you waiting for?" I tilted my head, smirking. "Go on, call them." Dario tensed slightly, his fingers gripping his phone. Still, he dialed and put to his ear. A pause. 1 second. 2. 3. Dario's smirk slowly faded. His lips twitched. His eyes darted left and right. "W what?" he whispered. His hand trembled as he silently extended the phone toward me. They want to talk to you," he muttered, barely able to force out the words. I took the phone and pressed it to my ear. "Speak." "Mike, you still having fun up there?" came the voice of my friend Nate. Calm, lazy, like he had just finished a cup of coffee. I chuckled. "Got a little sidetracked. How's it going on your end?" "Oh, all good. I'm standing in your kid's hospital room, surrounded by about 10 bodies. Not a great team, by the way. Didn't even get close to him before I put them all down." "Clean work?" "Of course," Nate scoffed. "I'm not a savage, unlike some people." I nodded, watching Dario. The bastard looked like a man who had just realized he made his final bet and lost every last cent. "Nice work, Nate," I said. "Stick around a little longer in case someone else misses the message." "Always a pleasure, bro." I ended the call and casually tossed the phone back to Dario. "So, Dario?" I smirked. "Can we get back to where we left off?" His face twisted in terror. Tommy was outright shaking now, pale as a corpse. All that was left was to finish this. Wait, Michael." Dario's hands shot up, his voice trembling as much as his knees. "We can make a deal." I tilted my head, pretending to consider it. "A deal?" "Dario, you literally just order me to be hacked to pieces and fed to the dogs. Forgive me if I have some trust issues." Tommy whimpered, his lips quivering. Hey, listen, Mr. Black. We just went a little too far. We can fix this, right?" I grinned. "Sure, you can fix it. Jump off the roof, and I'll consider letting your daddy live." Tommy's head snapped back and forth. What? You're joking, right?" "This is a joke." I stepped closer, pressing the barrel of my gun against his forehead. "Do I look like a fucking comedian?" Tommy let out a strangled whimper, but Dario suddenly grabbed his shoulder, gripping it tightly like he was trying to draw strength from his son. "Michael, you're a smart man. Don't be an idiot," he said, trying to steady his voice, though the fear still seeped through every word. "If you kill me, this city will turn into a war zone. I keep everything in balance. Without me, even worse scumbags will crawl in, and you'll have to start all over again." I nodded, pretending to weigh his words. "Yeah, now try saying that again, but this time with less shaking in your voice so it sounds like a threat and not a last-ditch effort to keep from shitting yourself." Dario clenched his jaw. I raised my gun slightly. "See, here's the problem. I already made my decision." Dario trembled, his fists clenching, his lips curling into a grimace of pure hatred. He knew it was over. His empire had crumbled. His son was a sniveling wreck. His last desperate gamble had failed. But he wasn't going down quietly. "Go to hell, you son of a bitch," he roared, yanking a grenade from his belt. His fingers pulled the pin, and he hurled it straight at my chest. I didn't even blink. Instead, I twisted slightly and kicked the grenade. "Catch, kid," I called out. Tommy, running purely on instinct, caught it midair. Then he looked down and realized what he was holding. What? Way out. He stumbled backward, panic overtaking him. He flailed, tried to throw it away, but his feet tangled. He tripped over the edge of the roof. For a split second, his eyes locked onto mine, frozen in sheer, unfiltered horror. Boom! The explosion bathed the rooftop in red light, ripping Tommy apart mid-fall. Chunks of scorched flesh rained down onto the city, landing somewhere below, probably on the windshield of some unlucky cab driver. I exhaled, lowering my gun. Then I turned to Dario. He stood there, breathing heavily, his face frozen in a mask of horror and disbelief. "Well, Father of the Year," I sneered. "Guess your parenting methods didn't quite work out." Dario forgot everything else and bolted. "Oh, no," I muttered, raising my gun. 2 shots, one to his right leg, one to the left. Dario howled in agony, collapsing to his knees, clutching at his shredded limbs. His pristine white suit turned crimson in seconds. "You," he rasped through gritted teeth. "You're a fucking demon," I shrugged. "And you're just another sack of shit who thought he was untouchable." I glanced around and spotted exactly what I needed. A fire hose. It was coiled around a reel, bolted tightly to the rooftop. I walked over, pulled out my knife, and sliced off a long section. Then I turned back to Dario. "Well, Dario, how do you feel about flying?" Were you? I didn't let him finish. Grabbing his arms, I yanked them back roughly and wound one end of the hose tightly around his wrists, securing them to the heavy rooftop ledge. "Michael, wait, let's talk about this," he stammered, desperation seeping into his voice. "Talking's over, Dario." I grinned, tightening the knot. I turned to the helicopter, still teetering on the edge, its landing gear barely holding onto the rooftop. Taking the longer section of the hose, I wrapped it firmly around Dario's ankles and secured it to the chopper's frame. Oh shit, Dario whimpered, trying to squirm, only to cry out from the pain in his ruined legs. I stepped back, admired my work, and patted his cheek. "See this setup? Once that helicopter goes down, you'll get a good 5 seconds of flight, and then you'll be ripped in half." "No, and low," Dario shrieked, thrashing like a fish on a hook. "You won't do this." I smirked, walked over to the helicopter, and gave the metal frame a light kick. "I think I will." The aircraft groaned, shifted, and started sliding forward. No, Michael, fuck. I can pay you. Any amount. I can." The host snapped taut. His arms jerked, skin tore, blood sprayed. "Michael." A sickening crunch echoed across the rooftop as his arms tore clean off at the shoulders. He had just enough time to let out a final, piercing scream before his body was yanked off the roof, plummeting straight into the wreckage below. I walked to the edge and looked down. There, among the smoldering debris, lay what was left of him. I sighed, nodded, and muttered, "Smooth landing." Then I turned and walked away, leaving behind a burning rooftop, rivers of blood, and one more city cleansed of its filth. I stopped by home, planning only one thing: wash off the blood, the grime, and the stench of gunpowder before heading to see my son. I just wanted 5 minutes apiece. A hot shower. Maybe a single sip of whiskey before diving back into this goddamn chaos. But as it turned out, chaos had come to me first. I heard at the moment I stepped inside. The ragged breathing, the dull thuds of bodies against furniture, the long, drawn-out moans that were definitely not from pain. I froze. No, not now. Not this fucking moment. I moved forward, pushing open the bedroom door. And I saw them. Julia, my loving wife, was on all fours on our bed, nails digging into the sheets, mouth parted in a silent moan. And behind her, pounding away with a disgusting, self-satisfied grin, was none other than Ramon. Yeah, that Ramon. The one who played both sides. The one who led me into a trap. The one who knew my son was getting beaten. This pathetic pair of fucks actually thought it was over. Ramon saw me first. What the? I didn't let him finish. I lunged, grabbed him by the throat, and ripped him off the bed, hurling him onto the floor. Michael. Julia shrieked, scrambling back, covering herself. I ignored her. Ramon tried to crawl away, but I grabbed the bedside lamp and smashed it into his face. A wet crunch. A scream. Blood poured down his cheeks. I leaned in. You knew you were fucking the wife of a man whose son got jumped on your orders? He choked, lips trembling, trying to form words. And Michael, wait. Let's know. I reached for the knife I always kept in the nightstand. Michael, don't. Julia shrieked. I swung. The blade sank into his thigh like butter. Ramon howled, his body convulsing as blood poured onto the floor. I yanked the knife free and struck again, severing the muscle completely. His leg flopped uselessly, barely attached. Wah. Relax, I sneered, flipping the blade. You've still got a spare. The next swing took off his arm. Now he just looked like a badly assembled jigsaw puzzle. But he was still breathing. Good. I grabbed a nearby trash bag, tore it open to make more space, and started stuffing him inside like a piece of discarded furniture. Please, he wheezed. I pulled the bag tight, knotted it shut like a Christmas present, and slung it over my shoulder. I walked out. Julia sobbed behind me, but I couldn't care less. Ramon's car was parked outside. Perfect. I tossed the bag into the trunk, slid behind the wheel, and drove straight to the port. There, I found a long pier, pulled his bagged-up corpse onto the driver's seat, dropped a brick on the gas pedal, and tucked a grenade under the dashboard. Bon voyage, Ramon, I muttered, slamming the door shut. The car roared forward, picking up speed. Right before it launched off the edge, the grenade detonated. A beautiful fireball lit up the night sky, sending burning debris raining down into the water. I wiped my hands on my jeans and walked away. But I still had one last thing to take care of. Julia sat on the floor, curled into a ball, sobbing uncontrollably. Michael, she whimpered. You're a monster. I crouched beside her, grabbed her chin, and forced her to look into my eyes. No, sweetheart, you're the monster. She hiccuped another sob, but I didn't let her speak. Take off everything you're wearing. I ordered, my voice calm measured. Her wide, terrified eyes shot up to mine. What? Strip. She hesitated. I simply pulled out my knife and traced the blade lightly along her collarbone. Now, trembling, she peeled off the remnants of her clothing, trying to shield herself with her arms. I picked up my phone and snapped a few photos. Michael, don't please. I stood, flipping the phone in my hand with a smirk. You're nothing now, Julia. She stared at me, uncomprehending. These pictures? They'll be everywhere. To all your friends, our neighbors, your parents. Everyone will know you were fucking the man who helped beat your son. And oh, she shrieked, lunging at me. But I simply shoved her back onto the floor. Oh, and one more thing. I froze all your accounts. The house. It's in my name. So, I gestured around us. This, not yours anymore. Where am I supposed to go? I stepped closer, leaned down, and smirked. The streets, maybe. Seems like you enjoy being under lowlifes. Her scream of humiliation filled the room as I turned and walked out, shutting the door behind me. Now I could finally go to my son. I parked outside the hospital, turned off the engine, and sat there for a moment, staring through the windshield. It felt like I had lived a dozen lives in a single night. The scent of gunpowder still clung to my hands. Dried blood stiffened my clothes. But inside, there was only an odd sense of calm. It was over. When I stepped into the hospital room, I saw Ryan. He was pale but awake, and when he noticed me, a faint smile tugged at his lips. "How you holding up, champ?" I asked, stepping closer. "Like a sack of shit," he rasped with a chuckle. "But I've had worse." "Oh yeah, you have." I smirked, settling beside him. "But it's all behind us now." Ryan nodded, though his eyes searched mine, filled with the question he didn't need to ask. "What happened to them?" I was silent for a moment. Then, simply, "They won't be bothering us again." His gaze lingered on my face, and I knew that he knew. "Good," he said quietly. The door creaked open, and Nate strolled in, hands in his pockets, his usual lopsided grin in place. "Well, black family," he drawled. "Ready for your next adventure?" I smirked. Have we ever turned one down? A few weeks later, everything had settled. I still had connections. People who remembered who I was back when I broke faces in a cage for millions. They reached out. The feds buried the case quickly. Dario had been a problem for some very important people, but as long as he made the money, they tolerated him. Now that he was gone, it was easier to carve up his empire among those who were more cooperative. The official story? Cartel infighting. Explosion at Dario's compound. Everyone dead. Drug lord's son blown to pieces on a rooftop during a business deal gone wrong. Typical criminal fallout. Neither Ryan nor I were mentioned in any reports. We left. To hell with that city. I bought a house in a quiet coastal town. Ryan healed, started training again, rebuilding himself. He wasn't the same naive kid he had been before, but he was still my son. And me? For the first time in years, I let myself breathe. I lived quietly. Got a job as a trainer at a local gym. People knew me, respected me, but no one pried into my past. And then she showed up. Emily. At first, just another girl wanted to learn self-defense. Then, something more. Something warm. Something real. She knew about my past. She didn't care. "Everyone makes mistakes, Michael," she said one night as we sat on the beach. "You think killing people is just a mistake?" She shook her head. "I think you only ever killed those who deserved it." I looked at her. Then I just smirked and pulled her closer. The past never truly leaves. But sometimes, it fades into nothing more than a shadow at your back. I'm no longer a fighter. No longer a killer. No longer a man caging a beast inside himself. Now I'm just Michael Black. A father. A man. Someone who finally found peace.